Hey everyone. Anthony Fantano here, internet's busiest music nerd. You know who it is. And it's time for another segment of the weekly track roundup, After Hours in the Dark, where I go over what I felt were the best and the worst tracks of the week. All the tracks that I mentioned in this video are linked down there in the description. Please check them out. And yeah, that's it. Without any further ado, let's get into it. Of course, we have to mention first our Amazon and Turntable Lab associate links down there in the description box. Treat yourself, get yourself something nice. And I want to shout out one track before we get into the worst tracks. Weird Al Yankovic, one of my favorite artists of all time, came out with a Hamilton polka. I mean, if you are a Weird Al fan, you probably love his gigantic, epic, amazing polka pop medleys. And essentially he does that, just kind of treating the music from Hamilton to a polka medley. It's pretty fantastic and very seamless, very amazing. Really one of his best medleys in my opinion. So make sure to check it out. It's down there in the description box. All right, let's get into the worst tracks of the week. It was kind of a bad week, and there were actually some tracks I feel like I could have put in here that I didn't, but I don't want to talk forever in this segment. So first, this new Logic track with Marshmello. Man, I loved Logic's last song. That 44 More track was fire. It was fucking fire. His flow on that track, a lot of his lyrics were witty, banger beat. This track, however, is really terrible sing-songy pop rap. Don't care for the instrumental at all. This is unfortunately when I do not enjoy a Logic song. Understand the dude's talented. I think he does come out with great tracks every once in a while, but there is this tendency of his to kind of make songs that go more in this direction that totally rub me the wrong way and just are not for me. But moving on from there, a new Godsmack song. Does anybody really need to know what they're in for on this track? I didn't even know they were still making music. And that sun logo, God, in high school, I saw so many people with that sun logo. Worst thing ever. Tattooed, I mean. But also, a new track from Future titled I Can't Wife No Thought. I also can't put any effort into this song either. This has to be one of his most wash, rinse, and repeat, most formulaic, most phoned-in songs I've ever heard Future on. I can't wait no that. Like, totally annoying, obnoxious hook on this thing. I guess if the Future fans still love it, the Future fans still love it, but I feel like he's running out of ideas at this point if this is going to be his biggest, latest single. It's just really, I don't know, average auto-tune trap to my ears. And finally in this section, new Albert Hammond Jr. track, Set to Attack. Probably the first single from this upcoming album of his, former Strokes member, or I guess, are the Strokes still together? They're kind of on and off at this point. But he's coming out with some solo material here. Obviously, Francis Trouble is the record. And this song to me sounds like literally just a Strokes leftover. Like, it's an okay Strokes leftover, but like, how is Julian in the Voidz writing crazy experimental futuristic pop rock and you're over here like still shilling this sound? It just doesn't sound right. It sounds awkward. Like, if you're going to break off from the group, do something that's worth listening to outside of the group. This to me just sort of sounds like a boring rehash, but I digress. Let's go into the tracks that I thought were meh, not terrible, not amazing, certainly worth pointing your attention toward, though. This new track over here from Unknown Mortal Orchestra, Not in Love, We're Just High. Nice, funky, pleasant little psych pop track, I guess. Not the most instrumentally lavish or creative or catchy song I've heard from the project in this recent album cycle and in recent years. I loved the last full-length record. This one underwhelmed me a bit, but it's still decent. It's still decent. This new Veirs track featuring Sufjan Stevens is a pretty nice piece of indie folk. Some pretty enchanting acoustic melodies on this cut that I thought were quite nice, and there's some kind of, I don't know, certainly a weird sort of vocal chemistry between Veirs and Sufjan. You don't really think of either of them as warm singers, but there is sort of an oddness and a standoffishness to both of their voices that in a weird way complements each other on this track that I thought was pretty cool. Next, this new song over here. What song is this? This is the new A$AP Ferg track, if I am correct, featuring Denzel Curry and IDK Kristi Yamaguchi. Very creative. Or wait, is this the Don't Worry No More? Yes, this is Worry No More with Diplo, featuring Santigold and Lil Yachty. Sorry about that. This track is kind of fun. There's some kind of silly, dumb lyrics on it, but I actually do like the kind of carefree attitude of the track. Santigold and Yachty don't do too bad on the track at all. Diplo comes through on the production here. It's very fruity, very summery, very colorful, very fun track, and I do like the sentiment of the song too. Moving on from there, CHVRCHES have a new song out featuring Matt Berninger from obviously the National. Kind of a bland electronic, kind of indie-tronic track. It's okay. It's not anything to write home about, in my opinion. At the Gates, some new, dense, heavy, kind of melodic metal here on this one. Not really anything groundbreaking from the band. If you are unfamiliar with At the Gates, I recommend checking out their older work. They have a lot of great, fantastic, sort of extreme, but again, very melodic metal albums. They're some of the best in the genre. But this latest track over here didn't seem too incredible to my ears, but still produced well, still performed well, still in the vein, the style that you typically expect At the Gates to perform in. Moving on from there, this is the Kristi Yamaguchi track with Denzel Curry, IDK, A$AP Ferg. Beats okay, flows are pretty good. I would say the best thing the track has going on is just the vocal chemistry between these three and how their different styles just complement each other on this track. Like each member comes through on this song and kills it. But is it like the best song either of the three of them have been on? I don't really think so. It kind of lacks a strong or an interesting hook. But still, IDK, probably one of the best guest verses I've heard him on. Denzel kills it as usual. And Ferg seems to come back to a more colorful form on this cut, so I'm not gonna scoff at it. It's a pretty good cut. And next, or rather finally, I believe this is from the new A Place to Bury Strangers track. That's it. New A Place to Bury Strangers track, There's Only One of Us. It's a pretty dark, heavy, shoegazy, post-punky track. Definitely one of the most sonically interesting and creatively produced that I've heard in this new album cycle. Given the genres of music that influence A Place to Bury Strangers, I've always wondered why just their soundscapes and their sound palettes aren't more adventurous and experimental and colorful and just kind of trippy and inventive and off the wall. This track to me sort of seems to be taking a step in that direction, even if I find the song itself to just be a little run-of-the-mill, but still, a track worth shouting out, track worth paying attention to. Let's move on to the tracks that I thought were the best this week, the best tracks of the week. Remember, all of them linked down there below. Really loved this new Young Fathers track, Toy. Not quite as structured as the last song that they put out, but still a very tense, funky, and weird experimental blend of pop music, of rap music, of electronic music. There's just such an interesting cross-section of genres coming into Young Father's sound these days that you really can't kind of pin them down into any one genre, and that's part of why I love what they're doing. This to me as a single didn't seem as catchy as the last track, but I'm sure it'll fit into the track list pretty nicely. They come through with their triple threat vocal thing and a very odd, again, tense instrumental. Just kind of loving what the trio's continuing to do here. Seems like they're growing in really interesting ways, and I'm glad that they're finally working with a more hi-fi recording again, because while some of their best and most interesting ideas have sort of come out when they've been working with lower fi recordings, I'm sort of hoping that they can come through with something that is as impressive, is as sonically interesting, but just a little cleaner and a little bit, I guess, more mainstream, because I would really love to see them blow up. Really love to see them blow up. Next, new Voidz track, Julian Casablancas and the Voidz, formerly that, now they're just the Voidz. The track is All Words Are Made Up. Probably the funkiest and poppiest of all the cuts that have dropped in this album cycle so far. It's linked to a really goofy-ass music video, too, which maybe was a little off-putting for me at first, but when I was just paying attention to the track, I just kind of really fell in love with how quirky and tongue-in-cheek the song is. To me, this came off as like maybe the most fun Voidz song ever. I really don't know what to make of this upcoming album. I mean, I've loved every track so far that I've heard as a teaser, but there are some cuts that seem a little mellow, some cuts that seem deeply experimental, others that are just pure bliss and fun. This album could just be all over the place and could be one of the most fun and inventive and off-the-wall rock records that we hear from Julian Casablancas and that we hear this year. So I don't know. I'm just really looking forward to it. Next, apparently Lorde and Run the Jewels are going to be going on tour soon. And to, I guess, mark that occasion, LP and Killer Mike have come through with a remix of Lorde's song Supercut. So they basically grabbed her vocals and reproduced the whole thing, and threw verses on there, threw some fire bars on there and shit. And I love the way LP produces around Lorde's voice on this track, because not only does he fit her into this completely revised instrumental, but the way that he produces around her, and I guess I shouldn't have expected otherwise, it sounds exactly like a Run the Jewels song. Like, it sounds like her voice was originally meant to be in a Run the Jewels track. And I'm sure part of the reason they did it this way is so they could perform this track together, which I'm sure is going to be really fucking epic live. Just really love the remix, really love the revision, love the way that they came together on this track. And I'm sure anybody who goes out to see them perform is going to have a good time hearing this revised version of Supercut. Next, new Jean Grae and Quelle Chris, new music video featuring Hannibal Buress and Eric Andre. One of the odder and more abstract tracks that have dropped from this forthcoming album so far, but still I like a lot of the, I guess, descriptions and stereotypes and their attempt at kind of breaking these stereotypes that come up in a lot of the lyrics. The track is titled Gold, Purple, and Orange. Really silly, quirky, tongue-in-cheek music video. They're really on some hipster hop shit, but still, I think it's a good track. I think it's a interesting forthcoming album. Really looking forward to seeing how they end up working together for an entire LP. Man, new Jack White track. Over and over and over. Like, my opinions and feelings on these new Jack White singles have really run the gamut, from like literally the worst song he's ever written to like, holy shit, like this is mind blowing. And this track falls into the latter of the two, because I just love the heavy and distorted and just like crazy guitar riffing on this track, combined with the background vocalists who are so like full of personality. And I don't know, man, it's just like I don't want to say it's an awkward combination of things, but it's a very unlikely combination of sounds. And the background vocalists, or I guess the vocal trio that appears on the track, their performance is so I don't know, it's so raw. It's not like super I guess so rehearsed that it's like perfectly in sync and clean and everything. Like, there's definitely a wildness to that vocal trio that lands on the track that I think is really awesome and adds a lot of personality to the cut. I don't know, man. I mean, this, regardless of whether it's great or bad, this new Jack White album sounds like it's going to be his most experimental yet. That's for sure going to be the case. Most experimental Jack White album yet. Which, regardless of my feelings so far on every song that I've heard, has me excited, because honestly, I feel like Jack has way too much talent to just be playing with all of these older sounds in a really unimaginative way. Like, he is an artist who could be doing more cutting edge shit, and I'm glad he's finally taking that risk, taking that dive, taking that plunge, because God, like, I feel like his solo material so far has just been so unimaginative, and now I feel like he's really taken it to the fucking hole on some of these new tracks. So, oh man, new track from Iceage featuring Sky Ferreira, who I was not looking forward to hearing her on an Iceage track, but lo and behold, it's actually a great track. Really love the horn sections on this track. Love how soulful this song is. To me, it's even better than the last song they released. This track feels like a logical conclusion from a lot of the material on their last album. You have a lot of this rough, wild, post-punk inspired rock music with this extra instrumentation. It's dirty, it's sweaty, but it's also passionate and soulful. The last track to me, while it was very good, it felt to me more like almost like a marching church track, which if you're familiar with, Iceage and the universe of side projects surrounding this rock band, then you're familiar with Marching Church already. If not, I've done a review, so check that out. But to me, the last track sounded a little bit more like Marching Church. Not necessarily a bad thing, but to me, this track felt like, this is the shot of energy and emotional fire I'm looking for. Moving on from there, a couple more left. Ooh, love this new Everything track. They have a new EP out, which I was not anticipating. So the English art pop outfit, experimental rock outfit, Everything. Their last full-length album, kind of underwhelming to me. A lot of the very quirky, eccentric, and futuristic qualities of their past efforts did not really turn up on the album, in my opinion, and it felt like some of their blandest and most energy-sapped songs yet. To me, though, this track that I wanted to point you guys to, Breadwinner, is not only, I think, a statement on modern society and masculinity as well, but also just incredibly bubbly and very colorful and very polyrhythmic instrumental, which is exactly the direction that I love hearing the band go in, exactly where I think they succeed the most musically. So just kind of love hearing them deliver that sound on a very well-written tune. So Everything, Breadwinner. And I think we have a couple more. I want to shout out this new DJ Khaled track featuring Jay-Z, Future, and Beyoncé. It's actually a pretty good song. I'm not anticipating DJ Khaled's next record is going to be good or anything. Like, his albums do tend to be just overloaded, just too many features, too many tracks, too many bad tracks, too much hot garbage. But every once in a while, you do get like 3 to 4 singles out of each album that he drops that are actually great. And this is one of them. Jay-Z's verse is really great. Future's appearance is actually kind of thrilling. And Beyoncé brings an incredible amount of swagger during her portion in the track in the back end. And I think that's going to be it, guys. Weekly track roundup is over and done with. Again, everything is linked down there in the description for you to check out, as far as the new songs and all that. Hopefully you got some good recommendations out of this episode. And make sure to subscribe to your boy, or hit up the link to subscribe to the channel, or the Fantano channel. And I will see you in the next one. Anthony Fantano, Weekly Track Roundup, forever.